Hello, folk. How you doing? Okay, so basically, what I'm going to speak about is something in relation to consequences, right? So I was doing a live feed on Facebook, and obviously, it's something in relation to do with this. And I saw some article or something that was shared, and this this whole thing is about emotional intelligence or something. They're saying that people on the right wing don't have emotional intelligence, and it sprung up to me, and I wanted to do this. Um, so obviously, this is something that I wanted to speak about. Now, I mentioned something obviously about the minimum wage. Of course, consequences follow that of what you do. So you might have the good intention to raise the minimum wage, but the consequences which follow that just so happen to be the fact that the unemployment drives up, um, and of course, fewer working hours, or it could end up being something along the lines of the very issue where you end up getting paid off. So the lower skilled workers, and there's an issue where um, well, let's just face it, it's one of these things that people who leave school, um, the younger ones are unable to find work. Um, as you said, ever heard of this market socialism? Well, this is the thing. I mean, it's that there's no such thing. Um, so I'm going to quickly just share this on Facebook. Just give us 2 minutes. It's just See, this is the thing. For some odd reason, it was breaking up on Facebook, right? I don't know why the live feed was. It doesn't make sense to me. Um, I don't even know if you can share a live feed on Facebook or so, on in terms of this. I've shared it anyway. It's up to people whether they want to click on it or not. I don't know. I'll need to look more into it. So yeah, I'll just quickly minimize this and I'll go back to this. Right. So basically, the whole thing, even when it came to, you know, the issue I was talking about, and I was actually speaking about something in relation to the consequences with regards to running the printing press, because socialism would seek to get rid of the private sector. And I was explaining something about this. You can actually make this out better here. Here it was 13, 1913, it was equal to the value of the product. So, $1 was equal to the value of the product, right? Basically, what happened was the devaluation of the currency. The more paper that they would print, it's every $1 to the value of the product. For every $1 they would print, there was one plus debt added to the currency. So what happened was this devaluation would occur. So every $1 they would print, the devaluation of the currency would occur. And it wasn't so much to do with the fact that, the prices would go up, right? Yes, sure, prices would go up, but it's not a case that the price of the products is going up. It's a case that the purchasing power of the currency is driving down. And that's why over so many years, over that length of period of time, you would see the devaluation. Now, I'm pretty sure roundabout, you can't really see it here, it's actually between there, roundabout there, where it says 1973. So 1973, just before then, in 1971, round about that period, you would see this high spike in inflation. And of course, I suppose you could see there's a dip there, but the high spike of inflation, and that was when the gold standard was completely removed. That was without question. So that's basically what I was going to mention about. At the end of the day, there's always going to be consequences which follow that. Give us 2 seconds. This thing's falling. There. Put that aside. So, yes, I mean, in terms of everywhere you find, I mean, it's all well having feelings about something. You might have the feeling to raise the minimum wage or the feeling to, reduce the price because you might have good intentions. Oh, but my feelings. You'll probably remember a video on I might have shown it before, where the lassie, she bald or whatever, and she ends up losing the plot. She's like, no, my feelings matter more than that of facts and all the rest of it, and she's losing the plot. She's really getting upset, and this guy stands and tells her, so you don't care about facts, you don't. And it reminds me, there's a thing I shared the other day there. It was basically, it was a group of protesters outside Lincoln Monument, and these people were obviously wanting to tear down the statue, right? They're obviously wanting to tear it down, right? But there was these other protesters, and these protesters were, defending it, and they would actually, one of the guys anyway had a megaphone. I don't really use their colour because I don't see them as black people. But that, there was a number of black people there. I don't really refer to them as that because I just see them as people anyway. But they were there defending the Lincoln statue, and they were trying to give them a history lesson. And these people are like losing their head and all the rest of it, and they're trying to shout over the top of them. But at the start of the video, the guy is trying to explain to this, lassie, and she's having none of it, right? She's just losing the plot. She's getting all emotional. She's, but you're one of us. You're one of us, and she's just losing the head. She can't even accept the fact that the guy, is trying to give her a history lesson. It's so sad, right? But that's the problem with these socialists. They're driven by emotion. And that's the problem. And economics, as I say, doesn't care about people's feelings. Just look at, for example, the rent controls. It only benefits the rich. And I was explaining on Facebook, when it comes down to it, it's just one of these things that they don't understand. So when the rent controls were put into place, it only benefited the rich. Those who were living in them for so long, they would eventually go homeless, and of course, they would end up losing their life. That was the consequences that followed that of the very, well, you know what I'm talking about. It followed that of the rent controls, because New York and San Francisco, those were two of the main places that you would see the rent controls during the Second World War. And it created that housing shortage crisis because, again, and I explained on Facebook, they think they can ignore the laws of supply and demand, and they would never argue with the laws of gravity. They would never argue with physics. They would accept the, gravity is just there, and if you walk off a cliff, you're going down the way. But for some strange reason, they seem to think they can argue with economics. And this is the level of ignorance you're up against. And they think they can argue with the laws of supply and demand. And it's just like I explained there in the video, yesterday. I know it's a lengthy video and I do apologise. I was thinking of breaking it up, but I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to make it one video. I tried to cut it down as much as possible and made it over 30 minutes. But what I explained in that video in response to Sean on the privatisation, people don't understand the difference between true private ownership and fake private ownership. They don't understand these things. And, you know, like I said about the laws of supply and demand, that's what determines prices. Now, I cut a lot of that information out because I wanted to try and cut down the size of the video. So, I cut out the information about, the laws of supply and demand. I cut out the information on, you know, the American Medical Association monopoly because I felt, I've got videos there anyway that they explain stuff like that. But that's the point. It's the very fact that it's really all down to the laws of supply and demand that determines the prices, right? Through consumer demand, nothing to do with private ownership. And socialists completely ignore this fact. They do not want to accept the fact that that the laws of supply and demand, what happens with consumer behavioral pattern when price goes up, consumer demand falls. Well, what do they think the employer is? If the wage of the employee, if the wage of the employee is the price to the employer, then obviously, the employer in this sense is a consumer of those employees. So if the price goes up, demand falls, and it's always this case, and it's the same with everything else. And it's just like the case that they think they can just ignore the consequences and their good feelings, their good intentions. They can just lower the price of anything and forget what price ceilings will end up leading to with the price shortage problems. You could go through umpteen examples. The housing shortage in the Second World War in the United States. You could look at, for example, the price floor that you saw in California with the surplus waste of all the oranges that was left to waste. You could turn to the food shortage crisis in Venezuela, as well as Cuba, as well as the blackout problems that you would face in, for example, Great Britain in the 1970s, or the blackouts in Venezuela, or of course, quite a popular one. I know a lot of my viewers are American. You'll know of in August. I'm pretty sure it was August 24th, 2003. There was a massive blackout in New York. I'm pretty sure it was Manhattan or whatever. Massive blackout in New York that took place, and they tried to blame it on the power grid. Nothing to do with the power grid, folk. It was to do because they said the power grid was, deregulated. It wasn't. It was the power grid is one of the most overregulated things. So it wasn't anything to do with the power grid. It was to do with, of course, a price ceiling, as it always occurs. And so the same thing with that of the shortage at the pump in 1974. The shortage at the pump in 1974 took place because Ted Heath would set down a price ceiling. That's because the inflation, because this is the crazy thing, right? Inflation was soaring because of the socialism. They're trying to run the printing press because, after all, you've got heavy nationalisation. What choice have you got? You're going to have to run the printing press. So inflation is going to soar, isn't it? So what do socialists then do to try and rectify the problem of the soaring inflation? They set down they set down price ceilings. And they set down a price ceiling, and it ended up creating that price shortage problem. It created that shortage at the pump in 1974. And the exact same thing happened in the United States of America. You saw that in 1978. Same thing, the price shortage problem would occur. There was a massive, queue of people, queuing for petrol. And of course, isn't it magical No different to straight after the Second World War. As soon as the rent controls were removed, in other words, the price ceiling, the housing shortage magically disappeared. Well, it was no different. In 1981, in the United States of America, as soon as that, price ceiling was removed, the shortage at the pump just magically disappeared. You see, so it's not like we don't have the evidence there to prove what price ceilings cause. But you could explain that to these people and they will religiously ignore it. Just like that, of course, a recent argument with that of, which is the mouth infidel. Now, you know, you try to argue with these people and it's like talking to a brick wall, basically, right? You're arguing with a brick wall. Um, and the question there, I know PV, you had mentioned obviously about that of market socialism. Well, this is the point. I was arguing with Mouthy Infidel, right? He wants to, debate me. But it's like debating a brick wall. Because no matter how much, no matter how often you tell these people that socialism's got nothing to do with that of the market, nothing, nothing, right? It's like a pantomime. You say, oh, one thing, and the other person says the opposite, and it's just like this back and forth. It's like it's going nowhere, right? It doesn't matter what you say, they're always going to say the opposite. You tell them the market's got nothing to do with socialism, they refuse to accept that fact. That's why, I do the kind of videos that I do, and I just put out the information that I do. It's down to the people themselves whether they accept what I'm telling them is right or not, right? Of course, if they want to go down the road and believing that there's something to do with the market in terms of with socialism or whatnot, well, that's down to them to believe that sort of thing. But there's the point I'm getting at. I'll just read a few of these comments. As you said, Chaz is an anarcho-communist experiment, and it failed. Well, that's it. You're right in what you say. Um, it's it's funny. I was watching it, and although I did a short video, right, and I pointed out the libertarian socialism, the thing that I pointed out was there was the constant fights. Again, this relates to the whole, good intentions. They've got good intentions and everything. That's fair enough, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you can't put your good intentions above practice. The good intention was, and you'll remember a video, right? And I could do it. I could show it. You'll remember a video by Libertarian Socialist Rants, right? You'll remember it if you've been subscribed to me long enough. There was a video that Libertarian Socialist Rants did, and he said something negative about the police. And he mentioned in one of his earlier videos of libertarian socialism that they wouldn't need the police and that they would just get rid of them. And their libertarian socialism would be all, wonderful and everything. And if you remember me telling folk, and I said to people over and over and over, I said, the real world is very different from what they make out to be. And there will be conflicts. And even my video on the economic calculation problem came before the whole fiasco, before the whole Black Lives Matter thing, before what's his name? That guy that died, George Floyd, right? Before he even died, I mentioned in my video, I says, about the consequences. I mentioned about, the conflict that people have, the disagreements. And the problem with socialism is that it tries to group people. It's not based on individual liberty. And there was contradictions in it. Let me give you one example of one of the contradictions, folk. Okay. Chaz. Do you remember a video in Chaz where the guy is sitting in his motor? And he's sitting in his motor and he's shouting. He's outraged because his car key has been stolen and his car's been vandalized, I think it is. That is a prime example of a contradiction of socialism, because there is no personal ownership. That personal ownership of him owning his own car, that is private ownership, right? That personal ownership pertains to private ownership. There's two types of private ownership, though. There's the personal ownership of possessions that you can move, and then there's the type of possession that cannot be moved, such as a house. A house is built, it's in a still place, it's your private ownership. That's capitalism, right? But he was trying he was trying to correlate that to everything to do with socialism. But that's the whole point. And in practice, you're seeing the constant fights, right? They're good intentions to get rid of the police, and it led to the very disaster where you're seeing people fighting with one another, possessions was being stolen, etc. And this is going to be good, right? Because I might do a video on that specifically. Because one thing that I even learned from this, one thing that I even learned from the whole Chaz thing, there was a conflict. And that's why I never argued on it before, because I've just learned about it. But there was a conflict between personal ownership and that of what they were attempting, right? Because and that conflict was when you have no private ownership, right? When there's no protection of individual rights, people take the attitude, they have this sort of psychological mentality that, oh well, there's nothing really there because the lines have been blurred. There's nothing really there to say it's yours, so I can do whatever I like with it. You understand? That's the reason why that's the reason why they were thieving things. You know, they were stealing from each other, and fights would break out because there's nothing there. There's no set given rules. There's nothing to say, oh, that's mine and that's mine and this is mine and that's mine, and there's this conflict. So, unlike capitalism, now I'm not an anarchist, but I respect anarcho-capitalists because anarcho-capitalists will tell you themselves that anarcho-capitalism is not lawlessness. Capitalism itself has laws. It has the rule of law. It has, the non-aggression principle. It has a court system. It has private police. Right? So it's not something that, and of course your individual rights are protected. Right? Yes, rules. There's rules, and it's protected. It's protected. Now, I'm a minarchist, and I believe there is a role for government. That's a whole other story. But with them, there's no. There was this conflict because with personal ownership of the possessions, right? This is the funny part. Because with personal ownership of possessions, what does that require? It requires protection of individual rights, of individual ownership. That's capitalism. that is capitalism, right? You know yourself that's capitalism. So if you remove that, if you've not got the rights and they're not there, then there blurs the lines. You end up with a serious problem. So you can see where that whole thing is going. As you said, taxation is extortion. It is. Funny enough, in Chaz, you would see the distortion. I'm pretty sure you heard about it. In Chaz, they were they were extorting private companies, threatening them with violence, and basically it's theft. What difference is that with government, taking money out of people without their consent through something called taxation, an income tax? It's no different. It's the same thing. So, okay, I will hold my hands up and I will say that I support a flat 10% tax rate. That's the furthest I would go because I acknowledge the fact that, okay, there, to some degree, in my opinion, government would have to exist under monarchism. But even I can concede to the fact that there would have to be, you know, some level of that extortion, right? But socialists will never own up to that. They won't. They they won't call it theft. they they won't call that theft. They won't do so. But in Chaz, in Chaz, it was the worst type. It was basically right. We're just we're just going to, you know, we're just going to, threaten you with violence, with physical violence if you don't give to us, right? And so I don't know if any of the private companies were given to them. I think where they were getting food from was from private companies just to appease them because they didn't want their private companies damaged. I mean, I think I saw a clip of an automobile company, a car company, and they broke into, I think they smashed his shop window in, and his son and his dad appeared, and they went to protect their company, and I think that their railing was vandalized and whatnot. They didn't do much else after that. They managed to put the fire out, but that's a prime example. That was basically what they were up against, and I feel sorry for them. I'm thankful that that their company never get damaged, that their cars or whatever. I don't know if that's just where they hold their office. I don't know about the cars, etc. I think there was a number of cars there, if I remember right. I can't remember. My mind is blur. I would have to look it up. But yes, I mean, they were threatening them with violence, of course. As you said, state schools creates people who put their feelings above everything. Yes, yes, you see that. You sadly see that with a lot of these younger ones today. Their common sense is out the window. I can tell you something, folk, and I've been noticing this, and I'm not gonna, I've been seeing something recently on Facebook, and I'm talking about something relative to personal. You know, what I mean is that the very people who were not listening to me for years, right, for people who were just getting on with their daily life, who were not really listening. Well, I don't know if they were for sure. Who were not really listening to me for years. I've been noticing something on Facebook, and I don't know whether it's because the pandemic and the lockdown, but because of this recent fiasco and going after the statues, I've been noticing certain people who you would consider aren't political. They're not really political. They're not really the type of people who are, into politics and economics and everything. They just go about their daily life. They may be influenced by certain socialist things because they don't really know any better. It's not their fault, right? It's not really their fault. But I've been noticing those type of people have recently been, they must have seen these things with the violence, with the riots, with the attacks on your freedom of speech, etc., and going after cartoons and, cereal boxes, etc. For example, Cocoa Pops. I think because of all of this, and because the left has just gone full blown crazy, these people have recently, and I've been noticing certain things. I've been noticing them popping up, and I don't know how, and I don't know why, but they seem to be propping up. And you know yourself, and I think it was 2015, and I recently watched, and I'm now on Parler, by the way. So if you're on Parler, give me a follow there, and of course I'll follow you back in that. Um, but and I will do a new intro. I want to create a new intro because I think that the old one, the Libertarian Views Scotty M, the thing that pops up and whatnot, I want to change that. I want to create a new intro, and I will of course have my Parler thing uh, added to it. But I have been noticing a number of those people that have been following me. Um, and it tells you that the natural state of the left is when they go into that full blown crazy state, they begin to waking up people who otherwise wouldn't have known. And there was an interesting video, and I do follow Terence K. Williams. I think that guy's fantastic, right? I love the guy. I think he's fantastic. Terence K. Williams put out a video, and it wasn't him speaking himself, but it was somebody from the liberal left, right? He recently came out speaking of how he's now going to vote Donald Trump. Right? This was a liberal, right? He's saying about how, he's going to vote Donald Trump. Now I can't put any words, but you would have to watch his feed, and you'll see for yourself. So what it's done, what this whole fiasco's done, is it's made people realise how crazy the whole thing is, and now they're pushing their supporters away, right? People who were left wing, and you can even look it up for yourself. There was even a video why I left the left. There was a recent woman. Um, she she put out a video explaining why. I don't know if it was recent in this year that she left the left, but now she's going to be voting Trump. So I reckon that there's going to be a landslide for Donald Trump in this coming election. And the reason I reckon that is because how can anybody stare in the face, even ordinary people, stare in the face of the left going after things? For example, the faulty timbers thing, and banning that, and then banning whatever else, and Jonathan Pye. You know Jonathan Pye. I never share his content because most of it was left wing. I remember him even taking a go at Margaret Thatcher. And I was thinking to myself, oh dear God, just another one of these lefties. He's meant to be a comedian or somewhat. I don't mind the guy, right? I don't mind the guy. But Jonathan Pye recently put out a video attacking the left, attacking them over all of this. And I don't know if you've seen the video. If you haven't, go and check it out. My God. So let me go through some of these other comments here. As you said, it's not white versus black. It's government versus individual. I completely agree with you. And as you said, rules, not rulers. Yep. And as you go on to say, Scotty, what do you think is the role of the government? The role of government is there to serve and protect your individual private property rights. Your rights are natural to you, and this is where socialists go wrong. Socialists trying to say that government enforces your rights. It doesn't. Negative rights are rights that are natural to the individual. The only role of the state is to be there to be a bodyguard, to serve and protect your individual private property rights, and that's it. The only other thing that I would say that government is reasonable for is maybe ownership over the military. That's it. That's probably the furthest I would go. I read recently, and maybe I'll do a video on it. In fact, I might do a video on it on on Murray Rothbard's argument on the private police, and I read an article on the Mises Institute of the private security, and I found it really interesting. You know, because before I didn't really have the knowledge on it, and I sat and read it all, and it made sense. It made sense because if a company wants, you know, security and it wants returning customers, it's going to have safety in the area where their business is. That's why you tend to find businesses leave areas if there's a lot of crime in the area, if it's a rundown area, for example. So because they face the threat of being robbed. So there's the incentive for businesses to upkeep their reputation. And like I said in the previous video there, reputation is a vitally important thing for the safety conditions of workers in the workplace. Well, it's a bit similar to that of having the private security. And, you know, Murray Rothbard even mentioned about within communities, within neighbourhoods, they would pay for the private security because it's very similar. So I find the whole thing very interesting, and you know that's perhaps the reason why I would support private police, and it's more efficient. Again, because of the profit and loss system, resources are allocated into the correct parts, and I do believe that gun ownership is vitally important. Look at the recent riots. Look at London. I don't know if you saw. There was a riot from a party that was broken up. The police attended, and what did the police do? They ran away from it. The police ran away from it. They did. It's embarrassing. And now I'm seeing the police in Britain are now appeasing to these Marxists. I can't remember what the word was. It was vigil or vigil. Is that the word? Is that not something honorary or something? Is that not a word that you'd use for those who are honorary? Marxists are far from anything honorary. They're a bunch, they're a bunch of economic terrorists. They've been pulling down statues and all sorts. So, you know, that's something I find interesting. So, what other comments have we got here? As you said, Scotty, is there any successful libertarian capitalist society? I want to do a video on something that Lawrence E. Reed covered. What was the name of the place? Let me quickly dig out on it's because it'll be on my Facebook. Guaranteed it will be on my Facebook somewhere. So let me minimize. Let me just check because I posted and I shared the article, and I knew nothing about this place. But I would like to learn even more about it. It was an article by the Foundation for Economic Education. Of course, Lawrence W. Reed had, well, I think he was one of the founders, if not the founder of Foundation for Economic Education, and he posted an article titled "Remembering the Ragusan Republic." The Ragusan Republic. I think it's a place, Ragusa, in Croatia. This place was way ahead of its time. way ahead of its time. And I mean, some of the things that you would read, this was like from what, the 15th century? The 15th and the 16th century. You have to remember this was like during the time period of feudalism and theocracy and all sorts. And yes, they may have had an aristocracy, but they had a limited small government. And for most period, they were left be. And it wasn't until I think about the 18th, sorry, the what was it? The 19th century it was. Was it the 19th? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the 19th century that something, you know, they eventually lost that. I can't remember the guy's name. Um, Again, I would have to read over it, but I think it would be a fantastic article to cover, because it would be useful for other people to know about Ragusa. And that was practically capitalist in many regards. I think they had a gold standard, or was it silver standard? I can't specifically remember. I think it was the silver standard. Um, Remarkable for what they had, even women's rights and everything. Like this was a place that was just way ahead of its time. It was unbelievable. Um, and I think more people need to know about it. It was like Hong Kong. It's unbelievable. Um, okay, it might not had some of the things that you would see later, but this Ragusa was just miles ahead of its time, man. It's just unbelievable. As you said, SH is hi Scotty. What's up with this Marxists? Whenever you brought up the subjective theory of value, they throw, but value and price are different sentence like the NPC and act like they won the argument. Yeah. You see, this is the issue, and I was wrong, and I will hold my hands up. The thing is with me is the fact that there are things that I know and there are things that I don't know, and the things that I don't know, I don't speak a lot about because I'm not one of those people. I like to do my research before I cover anything. For example, I'm requested to do a video and I will do it, as Pee Wee requested, and it's in response to the top 10, murderous capitalists or something. And I think the second one that they mentioned was something about the Pinkertons. Now, I knew nothing about the Pinkertons. I don't know anything about them. From a little research that I did, I think Pinkerton was Scottish, in fact. Anyway, from the little research that I did, and I found in an article, it turns out that the very people the strikers were actually violent, right? The strikers were violent. And as far as I remember, from what I read, the Pinkertons were actually hired as bodyguards. And they were hired to protect the property because to prevent a business doing business is an act of violence. And the strikers would, were violent towards the non-strikers. And so there's an argument there. And again, it's something I would need to do more research on and cover that in a video. But the way that the socialist spins this, they want to have you believe that, it was just one-sided and the Pinkertons were these evil, killers, so to speak. So you understand the point that I'm addressing here. I suppose you could look at the Pinkertons from my brief looking at things. You could look at them somewhat like private security. And what would be wrong with that? Well, it's simply because 16 people died? Well, that's their own fault then, isn't it? If you try to if you try to attack somewhere violently, and it's a bit that's a bit like You know what it sounds like? It sounds like the rioters today from Black Lives Matter vandalizing private property and then questioning why they're being jailed in the first place. That's what it sounds like. It sounds identical to that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was wrong for saying that it was Adam Smith that was, yeah, that was the one that brought forward the subjective theory of value. It wasn't. It was Ludwig von Mises, and I should have known better on that. So I was wrong on that, and I held my hands up to that. But when they bring out that whole thing about Marxists and Karl Marx himself accepting the subjective theory of value, that is just ludicrous. The subjective theory of value did not come around until after Karl Marx. You know, Karl Marx did not argue for the subjective theory of value. Even Kevin D. Williams, in his book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism, he points out the very fact that the difference between Mises' argument and that of Karl Marx viewed prices as something endogenous rather than exogenous. And the difference with Mises was Mises actually asked the questions, who is it valuable to, and at what time is it valuable, and in relation to what other given products, and stuff like that. And so that was the issue. And yet, again, Mouthy Infidel was just so irrational that he was trying to correlate Marxism around this of, subjective theory of value. And I'm thinking to myself, what? It's just, that's why debating people like that, it's just, and they think that I'm too scared to debate them. It's not that I'm too scared to debate them. It's not that I don't have the knowledge. It's the fact that you may as well smack your head off the wall. For example, you explain the economic calculation problem. What do they come back with? They try to correlate the market with socialism. You're like, Jesus Christ. They would drive you nuts. Yeah, that's why you don't bother with them. Thoughts on Georgism? Again, I would have to do a lot more research on it. But I found Murray and Rothbard's argument interesting. The way he was putting it was the fact that they would have 100% land value tax. And as far as I'm aware, if you're going to take away people's private ownership of land, then isn't that inherently socialist? I mean, if you can't own private ownership of land, then what about farmers? And this is what blurs the lines. Because if you take away private ownership of agriculture, isn't that going to lead to starvation? That's why I would have to ask a lot of questions on it. Because then that would pertain to communal ownership of property. And if you're going to have communal ownership of property, yeah, I don't see how you can have communal ownership of property and have private ownership of property at the same time. It's just an oxymoron. So I'm not as clued up on Georgism. I would have to ask a lot of questions. But someone was saying that he was a capitalist. He supports capitalism, but at the same time, he supports Georgism. He supports, yeah. It's a very confusing thing to me. As he put it, you would get rid of all other taxes. Fair enough. You would have this land value tax, but he was saying his wouldn't be this. He was saying his wouldn't be this 100% land value tax. I don't know how that operates, because I'm not as clued up on the individual, property rights in terms of land ownership, etc. But I do find the thing very interesting. I think it's very, very, very odd. It's a very strange concept. Someone said something in relation to minarchism. I'm not entirely sure. See, the thing is that minarchism to me is essentially just like anarchism, but just having a government there to serve and protect individuals' property rights. I suppose people have their own people have their own view of what minarchism will be. To me, I think minarchism is just something to do with minimal government and having private ownership of land. That to me is minarchism. So that answers that. Let's see what other questions I may have missed out. Right, as you said, Puru. As you said, hello Scotty. Are you aware of the large amount of politically charged TikTok creators? When you speak about politically charged, what does that mean? The thing is with TikTok, if there's one thing that I'm aware of it, and the reason why I avoided it is because of security issues. It's actually being spies. In other words, I think China is heavily involved, and they basically know everything about their private life. I don't. Again, you've got no privacy. Everything has been spied by China. I don't know if it's these Chinese tech companies or whatever. I'm not as clued up, but there's an article on it and everything, and there's there's literally none of it. I don't trust the thing, and that's why I was never on it. I see a lot of people posting on it, and it's like these silly dances and mimes of songs, etc. And thinking, oh dear God, and then eventually I start seeing people posting these political things, and I remember this, white lassie, and I don't like bringing in colour, but the reason why I bring in colour in this instance is because she started going on about how, oh, we all derived from black people of Africa, and then the pigmentation of skin, etc., and this is why we're all apparently triggered, etc. And history isn't as black and white as that, and I wouldn't even care where we came from. But these leftists are just so triggered, and I remember seeing that post, etc., and it was on TikTok. It was just the usual nonsense. This just makes you laugh. You said, Prue, there is a huge community of debaters, talking heads, and institutes. I think that'll be in relation to that. The thing is, though, isn't TikTok one of these things that limits you to a certain amount of time that you can produce a video? And I don't even know how the site operates. I don't even know how it works. I've got no idea how the site works. I don't know. Are you forced to respond to someone? Is it like Facebook, or is it like Twitter? Is it, I no idea. So, yeah, I've seen certain people sharing the videos and whatnot. It's just, it's crazy. Yeah, I find that interesting. 13, 14, as you say, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I do agree with that, in many regards. Wouldn't that just be what the Pinkertons were? I mean, they were bodyguards. They were hired for the sake of security. Wouldn't that just be who they were? So, when socialists try to make them out as killers, well, they're bodyguards. So obviously The only way I could see them having killed 16 people is if they reacted to something of violence in the first place. So I find that interesting. To me, I agree with the police, and that would be the police. You know, having private police, that is private police. That's, you know, private police is basically what you've described a militia, in a sense. And they're hired to do a specific job. And I would agree with that. As you said, yes. As SH goes on to say, Hong Kong is now the second economically free country in the world, following the decades of being the first one. Do you think Hong Kong is lost? Sadly, you know. That's what happens when intervention takes place. It's very, very sad to watch what's happening in Hong Kong. You know, after 1997, it lost its way, and it became more and more corporatist. I've got a friend originally from Hong Kong. He's lived here in Britain since 2012, and of course he goes back every so often. I don't know if his family lives over there. And even he understands the strong value for the free market economy, because of course he would have lived perhaps through that period. But what you see today and what led to the rise of the umbrella revolution, all of that stemmed because you could never trust China. After 1997, you would see the progressive government intervention, and sadly, you know, that's what's led to the whole problem, so to speak. So yes, I mean it's a very sad thing to watch, so to speak. And I mean, what can we say about China? What they should do, because it was under British occupancy and more than 90% in a poll had dimmied. And there was someone else from Hong Kong, I think, that disagreed with me. He said, oh, they're too prideful, they won't go to Britain. I don't entirely believe that. I don't agree, because every individual's different, right? Because the truth of the matter is, my friend who I was speaking about, he would actually argue that the people of Hong Kong should be given the right for British national overseas passports to go to Britain. He argues in favour of that. And I would agree with him. And what they should do is they should create a chartered city here in Great Britain. Now, one of the places they argued for, they said was a possible place where they could create a chartered city, was here in Glasgow. Basically where Prestwick Airport is. Prestwick Airport was going under. We've got two airports. We've got Glasgow Airport and we've got Prestwick Airport. Well, because of where Prestwick Airport is, it's basically on, thymied land. So building a chartered city is basically where the land would just be left empty. And what they would do is they would, allow the people of Hong Kong to come to it, and they would build on it. They would build on that land, and that specific land that would soon become a town and then a city, that would be left be. The British government wouldn't be able to touch it. The Scottish government wouldn't be able to touch it. It would just be left be, and it would be occupied to become free market, right? So it would cost nothing. It would cost nothing on the British taxpayer. It would cost nothing on us. It would cost nothing to set up. It would just be there for, the Hong Kong people to decide for themselves to come and live and work there. It would be a free market. And what it would do, however, it would influence every other city around it. Because after all, you cannot border a city or a country that has lower tax rates, etc. So what you would end up seeing is this free market would end up kicking and dragging all the other socialist cities around it, in the right direction. That's why we want to see a chartered city here in Britain. That's the solution. Now, the likes of Daniel Hannan was arguing for it. So it's been argued by the Conservatives. All it's down to now is the Chartered Institute to negotiate with them. I would recommend that the Chartered Institute does so. Because if the Chartered Institute can get them to pass this forth, because I think there's one happening in Africa right now somewhere, but if they can get them to do so, then it would be perfect, because then we could have the chartered city where they can come over, live and work in that chartered city, and it would allow, Britain to grow itself out of this debt problem. And that's the reason why they need to do that whole thing on the chartered city as the solution. Because then the people living in Hong Kong right now would have British national overseas passports to come live here, and they would go to that chartered city, and it would be free market. And trust me, it would embarrass every city, and it would embarrass the British economy, and it would drag the British economy towards a free market. And in saying that, that would influence the United States of America in their direction. Believe it or not, that's what happens. Just that's why. See if the United States of America was to drive towards a free market economy, that actually has influence in what happens here in Great Britain. It does. It has influence. You might not think it. It does. It has big influence. That's what you want. You want the Western world, doing that. That's exactly what you want. Because remember this, countries have to compete against one another, right? So if you have to compete with a free market, you have to go towards a free market. China's just a different story. It's their own fault if they want to take the gun and point it at their own foot and shoot it. You get the point. So, as you said, Switzerland is one that's quite an interesting place. Yeah, when the morning skies grow red, and all the radiance that thou, O Lord, I can't read the old English. Thou, O Lord, it's caused my eyes. I can't read from this distance. Appeareth, is it, in their light, when the Alps glow bright with splendour. Pray, free Swiss, pray. Switzerland is a very interesting place, it is. I find their direct democracy and everything quite interesting, and they have been free market for a lengthy period of time in many regards. SH, as you say, what's your opinion on copyright and intellectual property? It's one area I'm not so clued up in, and I do find it interesting because, like I said, I mean, I'm a photographer, so, and I'm even a content creator. So here's the thing. Being a content creator, I use other people's video, and I don't use it in any paid sense. And I also use music So I'm using people's music. And as a photographer, the photographs that I take, I put copyright on them. I would like to know, I would like to have a simplified understanding and simplified information put to me. What would be the argument in the absence of that? Because it sounds good. I think if there was a possible way to remove that, and it would be good. So all of these things. There's so many questions that I could get through here. Classical communists, such social conservatives, as you said, Stalin criminalized homosexuality and drugs, and Che Guevara systematically killed black and gay people. Yeah, they were racist. I mean, it's funny how these socialists like to make them out as if they're anything of the sort. That's why, they'll go after, all these other statues, but, they end up putting a statue up of the likes of Vladimir Lenin. Wasn't he a racist? As far as I'm concerned. That's how you know it was never about this whole thing about Black Lives Matter, etc. It was never about racism, etc. That was all just disguised, just an excuse for their cultural revolution. As you said, no, I guess it was Karl Menger or Bum Boverk who created subjective theory of value. Interesting. I think I've heard that before. I think you're right. Chaz had collectivized ownership of agriculture. Yeah, I seen they actually segregated it as well, which was funny. That was funny. They segregated it down to colour. I mean, that was, as you said, all businesses can do is provide services to benefit the individuals, and if hypothetically privatised securities start arresting people for smoking weed, we could just boycott the security company. And then, as you said, there's anarcho-capitalist societies that lasted for 1,000 years, like medieval Ireland. Yeah, I would have to learn more about Ireland because I don't know their history, so I really don't specifically know. But I think you're right because I remember there being a talk between Tom Woods and someone else like that. So I find that quite interesting. And then, of course, as you said, Daniel, views on why the young support socialism. It's sadly because they're so dreamy and they're so easily to lead up the garden path. And this is what the problem is, Daniel, because the state education system, these kids look up to these teachers because they're the ones who are viewed upon as the ones as the custodians of knowledge. And because they're not taught to critically think, the danger with that is the very fact that these kids become so naive. They believe these university lecturers, they believe these school teachers. And most of these parents don't really take it upon themselves to teach them because they themselves don't really know much about, politics and economics, etc. So they just leave it down to teachers. So when kids go home, they're not being taught anything. They're not getting any information. The parents don't bother. And what ends up happening is the very fact that these kids end up going to these schools and they believe what the teachers are telling them as gospel. And they don't critically think. They don't do the independent research. And you've heard often enough, I mean, critiques of these schools, etc. It's unreal. It's sadly it's just one of these things with the state education system. It holds so much power. We we seriously need to do something about that. Not often would I support government intervention, but we seriously need to do something about that with these universities. They are a massive danger. I mean, I'm all for freedom of speech, but what the hell is going wrong when you see it yourself today? I mean, there's something seriously wrong with the education system. Um, and it's actually frightening the amount of these Marxists coming out of these universities. It really is. It's a scary thing, the history of state education itself speaks for itself. I mean, it was never used to educate society. So let me just quickly, because I need to go and get something to eat. But I'll quickly go through these last comments, and then of course I will get around to doing. I'll look into whatever other video I might do at some point because I'll have to do research. So I'll read through these last comments and I'll, end the video. But let me go through, as you said, SH, Marxists love to separate capitalism and free market, claiming capitalism is the private ownership of the means of production, but the free market is untouched system of distribution. How to refute? And as you said, also, they then go on calling some of the most interventionist countries as capitalist. I think Vicky 1999 called Congo a capitalist country because they have private property. Yes, exactly. You see, the issue is, and this is the truth of the matter, and it's why I point it out, you cannot correlate capitalism to collectivism. You can't. You can't do it. No one can. Do your own independent research. Look at what collectivism means by definition. Collectivism is the complete opposite of capitalism. That's why under umpteen sources you will find the antinomy for that of, what's antinomous for collectivism is capitalism. Capitalism is opposite of collectivism. You can't correlate capitalism to collectivism. You can't. And so the mixed economy is a mixture between collectivism and individualism. So it's a mixed economy. And so when speaking about state capitalism, that's what it is. It's a mixed economy. It's not capitalism. Capitalism, a capitalist system, means the free market. It's under individualism. And that's how you force the issue. It doesn't matter about what Vicky 1999 says. Vicky 1999 tried to discredit my argument on the individualism collectivism. But in order for them to discredit it, they're discrediting themselves. Because you would have to be irrational just to brush them aside. And it's not just a case of looking at what's synonymous, it's a case of looking at definitions and understanding. And individualism defines the free market. That's that really is just the case of the matter. Let me quickly go through. As you said, Gears Demon, people who are saying all lives matter actually get hate. Crazy. Exactly. It is crazy. It's mental. It really is mental. I mean, that shows you that the left are not interested in facts. The reason why they want to call you racist for everything is simply because their real agenda is to ban everything and basically in the name of their cultural revolution. That's what this really is all about. This was never about racism. This was never about slavery. Never about it. Why else do you think they went after the statue of Robert the Bruce, right? What did Robert the Bruce have anything to do with it? You see, no different to the Soviet Union, it would seek to destroy everything, right? To seek to destroy everything to usher in the socialism, and that's what it really all boiled down to. Again, as you go on to say, Scotty, back in the summer of 2018, there has been a studio arson. Did you say studio arson, and a lot of people died. Jason Unruh was happy about it and was celebrating that tragedy. I've never. What's this studio arson? How come I've never heard of that? Studio arson. I would need to look that up, but the fact that he's laughing at something that, you know, some people probably died or something, or damaging property. I mean, this is this classic of these socialists. They're so. Let's just say for what it is, they are pure evil, folk. They are pure evil. Um, I mean, what else do you use to describe them? I mean, that's just pure nastiness. And I'm not surprised about him. I remember the response video that he did to me. I could see it in his eyes. He has some form of psychosis. You could see it. There's something wrong with him. I could be wrong, but there is something gone with him. It's just that it was this glare in his eyes. You would see it in the response video that he made towards me, and he had a few other people on it. He talks nonsense anyway. I'd have to look up his videos to see what other new stuff he's put out. He always talks nonsense. It was fun doing the response videos and taking the mickey out of him. As you said, check out this subreddit called Shit Satis. I can't even pronounce it. They're tearing Vicky's videos apart in there. Well, there you go. That's interesting. I'll definitely check that out then. I'll definitely check that out. Thank you, Gears Demon. I greatly appreciate it, pal. It's my accent's Glaswegian. Funny enough, if I go up north into somewhere like Inverness, they can immediately identify me as Glaswegian. Suppose that's just one of those things. As you said, glad to hear another libertarian views. I enjoy seeing so many fellow libertarians and stuff like that. I follow a lot of libertarians and conservatives, and I've never had any malice with any folk, no matter their views. In that regard, in terms of libertarians and conservatives, I get on with so many folk, and for me, the main message, the libertarian and conservative movement should not be anything. Should not be divisive. It should. Our main message should be unity, getting behind and driving towards the free market, and then there should be the debates on things like gay marriage and all sorts and whatever it may be. The most important thing behind the liberty movement, whether they're conservative or libertarian, is get together and really fight for the free market. That's my message. Oh, my foot's fell asleep. Right. SH, as you said, how to prove absolute freedom of speech is good, even if given to Holocaust deniers. People really hate them. Yeah. I mean, the answer is free speech. How you defeat such a thing is by providing information that refutes the argument. That's how you put it in its place. You don't try to silence it. You basically defeat it by using counter arguments. The only reason why the socialists try to silence you, therefore, is basically because they don't have counter arguments. That's That's why they try to silence you, because they've not got counter arguments. They know they've lost. That's it all in one. As you said, it's a studio getting burned down. Interesting. Again, I would need to look that up. And as you said, Jason was laughing at Kyoto Studio. It's an anime studio. Interesting stuff. And as you said, Daniel, Nick Fuentes. Views on Nick Fuentes. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry, I do apologise. There's certain things that I know and there's certain things that I don't, and I would need to do research on Nick Fuentes. I don't recall the name though. I'd need to definitely look that up. It's one of these things, like I say, I don't like to put out a lot of information that I don't know, like socialists do. As you said, he's an alt-right YouTube that hates the free market. I'll look him up. I'll take note of things, and like I say, I take note of things. Let me just show you, for example. I don't know if I can show you. Can you see this? Does it come up there? I haven't ticked any off, but I keep a list of things in my notes. As you can see, it's not focusing properly. I do apologise. It's just a list of things, basically to show you what I'm doing. That have been requested to me. So, folk, like in terms of requests, I will add that one to the 10 things where he goes on at that other guy, non-compete, goes on about, killing people. So I will add that video to that list. And there's obviously ones in there. Because then I've got a wealth of things to keep me going, for me to put out content. And there's obviously things that I come across myself that I'll add in there as well that I feel I want to do. I said to folk that I'll do a video on the good intentions and their consequences. I'll do a video on that. I did say I'll do that. I don't know how to share a live feed on social media like Facebook and stuff like that, like when I'm doing these live feeds, but whatever. It's just one of those things, because then I get a lot more views in this thing, you know what I mean? It helps. But yeah, it seems that video that I put out just last night was, popular enough, so to speak. Anyway, folk, it's one of these things. I will get around to doing that video. As you said, young socialists that have never lived in a socialist country. I suppose I could do a video on that. That would be quite an interesting one. As you said, last question was Ludwig von Mises an anarchist? Ludwig von Mises. I don't really, because I haven't read his stuff in depth. A lot of what I gathered from Ludwig von Mises came from the Mises Institute, not from reading Mises himself. So I would, and I have actually come across a number of books that have been shared, not shared as in like put out there, but a number of books that I've seen that I actually want to buy. I think there was one on money and stuff like that, and there was a recent video clip put out. What was it? It wasn't Prager University. I can't remember who put it out. It's an excellent video. I'd need to find it. And it was the story of Ludwig von Mises. It was absolutely fantastic. And of course, he mentions the story of the books that he came out with. And those books I want to actually buy. I want to get them. I've got my Kindle. So it's handy having that. I want to get them on Kindle so I can read his books. I want to finish off, however, Christian Yimyet's book titled "Socialism: The Failed Idea That Never Dies." The chapter that I'm on, I think, is chapter 9 or something, and it's on Venezuela, which is quite an interesting topic. I read obviously the one on Nazi Germany, the chapter 8 that he covered. So once I finish that book, then of course I will look at a number of his actual own material, his own books, rather than from what I've learned of Mises from, from the likes of the Mises Institute, etc. Because after all, they're largely influenced from his work. But he's fascinating. I think there was a book somewhere on money. I would really, really love to learn more and more on the history behind the money, because I would love to put out a video on that. I would more than love to put a video out in that. In fact, I would probably go as far as to doing it much like I did with the economic calculation problem, where it's kind of like similar to more of a film style, a documentary film style, rather than, just a simple response video or whatnot. And that's something I would love to do more on, because I find a lot of people don't understand money. A lot of people don't. And it seems that's the primary fault of so many. So that would be interesting to do. As you say, I would recommend you do a video, Ash Sarkar, about communism. Yes, I will add that actually. I will. Um, I recently watched a video, and of course, I'm on Parler, and the video that I had watched, who was it? It was it was how can I forget his name? It's terrible of me. How can I forget his name? Sargonavakad. Sargonavakad did a video, I'm pretty sure. I think it was her. Or someone similar. But yeah, if I can gather material together of her going on about communism, yes, I'll definitely do a video on her. Definitely. People like her need to be torn apart. They need to be. Um, they're so clueless. They really are so clueless, and they're so dangerous. These people are just they're completely gone. They're a lost cause. You know, they don't even know anything about economics. Nothing about it. Um, they're so far gone. As you said, SH, good job, bro. I recommend you check out Econ Clips channels. It's an Austrian economic channel. It has good stuff. Thank you. In fact, what I'll do right now, because I know that when I end this feed, 2 seconds. I know that when I end this feed, I know that these comments are going to disappear. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to quickly open up this whole thing, this notepad, and I'm just going to note down quickly the stuff that so far has been mentioned as recommendations. So, video on Ash Sarakar, and the other one, as you mentioned, I recommend Econ Econ Clips check out Econ Clips channels. Is Econ Clips an actual channel, or do they have several channels, or is this a group or something? Same to yourself, pal. Take care. And views on Philosophy Tube. I'll just note that down anyway, because I think I've done a video response on Philosophy Tube before. I think that was the guy that I did the. It's a channel. Well, okay. I've noted down 3 so far. I think the other. There was ones above here. Yeah, I'm thinking of doing the non-compete on killings. So I'll definitely get around to doing that video response on that. Let's see. Just checking, because there might have been some other recommendations that I might have missed out. Scrolling up just through the comments here of you guys of what you've put out. I don't know. If there is any more, what to do, folk, right? What to do. If you've got any recommendations, I haven't added them here. So far, I've got the Ash Sarakar one, the Econ Clips, the Philosophy Tube, and the non-compete on killings, right? What to do is if there's any other ones there, comment in my newest video, and I'll see it in the comment section. I'll be able to take them, because what happens is when I end this live feed, this end the stream, the comments don't appear. It's very restricted. Well, the comments do appear, but it appears in, in a length of time of the video or whatnot. Sometimes it can be harder to get access. It's hard to explain. Anyway, folk, thank you for watching the live stream, and of course, I will get around to doing the videos for you guys, and I'll definitely take note of them, and yeah, it'll be interesting. Some quite interesting videos ahead, and I greatly appreciate it. Right. So if you've got any or that, just comment in the newest, and I greatly appreciate it. Right. So if you've got any or that, just comment in the newest video, which is the one on the privatization thing, in response to Sean. Just comment in there, and I'll get the thing, because I don't know any other way that people can comment. Not that I can think of. So yes, folk. Like I say, I'll get the comments there, and that'll be something I can add. And that, as I say, I mean, these videos I can continue to do, and it gives me something to just continue put out content. So anyway, folk, thank you for watching the feed, and I shall talk to you later. Cheers.